I would like to invite Lars Olsson up here. Lars is one of our energy gurus in Sweden, has worked on both the business sides and the public side on implementing energy ideas and putting it to work.
Yeah.
Here you are, and please introduce your panelists. And if we have time, I allow for some questions after also the panel to cover the broad context of the discussion. Please, Lars.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to have the possibility to guide you through this afternoon about some interesting topics, ladies and gentlemen. So just very briefly about my background, as Erik said, I've been working for about 6 years now with integration of renewables, mostly wind power. And of course, it is challenges all over the world, wherever you do it. And in connection with that, we have discussed the concept microgrids several years. And we try to define some kind of microgrid. What's a microgrid? I used to tell someone that in Sweden we have 5.2 million customers. In some way, inside the meter, you have all some kind of microgrids. Because you have heat pumps, you have PV solar power, you have electric cars. So already there are several of microgrids. So with a short introduction about, I think it's the best way to welcome the panelists up to the podium, and we can have a short introduction and hear some history, some interest from the panelists. So please come up. So we will, during this afternoon, discuss some very interesting topics. We start with some overall topics, and then we go into more specific subjects. I think one of the topics we of course have to discuss to start with when you're doing your introduction now, what's the main challenges to integrate so big amounts of renewable in the current energy system? So just tell your name, your interest, and your little bit experience from this area that we're going to discuss. Please start.
Oh,
yeah.
My name was in the last, so I thought I would come last. I am Raghunath Mahapatra. I represent Wellspun Energy. Just briefly, we are at the present moment the largest solar developer and operator in India with 480 megawatts of installed and operating. We are also expanding into wind. We are part of a $4 billion Wellspun group. And I'm here to look for different opportunities that are available for the group as a whole and renewable energy specifically.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Ritik Majumdar, last but one, so you're going from the other side. So I work in ABB. I will not give any introduction of ABB. So I mostly also work with microgrid, which is the mention and main focus of the topic today. And yes, there will be a lot of discussion. I think it will be interesting to hear about the challenges, and we'll discuss that later stage. Yes.
Yeah, very well, yeah.
My name is Rajiv Totapalil, professor at KTH and also director of the research center Swegrids. And I am here representing some of the issues we are dealing with at KTH on the research side.
What is KTH?
Royal Institute of Technology.
So my name is Bo Normark. I'm representing the Royal Academy of Engineering here in Sweden. I have a past in the industry where I was involved very much in introducing transmission technologies like DC in India. So I'm used to powering, building the grid from top to bottom. Today I'm more interested maybe in looking from the other side to build microgrids. And eventually these two will have to meet. That's an interesting topic for me.
Hello, my name is Mats Olausson. I come from SEB. SEB is a commercial bank. We have a long history of supporting our clients throughout the world, including in India. My colleague Jenny Möllerberg on the second row is here. My experience in the bank is from the green bonds team. So in this panel, I'm looking more at the financial aspects of this.
Yes, and my name is Birgitta Resvik. I'm coming from the utility company Fortum, that is a Finnish company, but we have the Nordic as our core, and we have expanded in the Baltic Rim in Russia. And now we are, since some years ago, coming in and trying to establish also in India, just as the State Secretary said. And there, in India, we are focusing on solar, as we see as the least riskiest way to invest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Maybe the lady can start, Birgitta. What do you see the overall challenge to introduce a lot of renewable? It can be both technical, economical, social challenges. And of course, we know, all of us know the benefit that what we got. But what's the biggest challenge, do you think?
Well, we can say, first of all, in the Nordic, we have a very fortunate electricity system, as we have a lot of hydro in our system. And that is, of course, making it so much easier, I would say, to introduce more volatile production. And so I would say the challenge is really perhaps not to get the energy, it's really the capacity to get to get the energy every second, and that is the real challenge. So of course here is coming in how we can regulate, or I would say also how to find the business model. What sort of incentives do we get to create as the customer? Are they willing to participate into the business? And of course, so here I think it's important how is how are we pricing the customer and this sort of issues. So I think it's not only about technology, it's very much about a business model.
Thank you very much. So we have some challenges. So of course, the market, we have to adopt the market to this renewable too. It's not only technical challenges. Okay, thank you. And what do you think, Mats? What's the challenge? Is it financing, or is it other challenges you think too?
I'm sure there are plenty of challenges, but in my team we get involved when we come to the financial challenges. The technical stuff is far too difficult. We have to leave that to some others.
So
but for the financial aspects, we have some very interesting solutions, a very new financial product that many of the world leaders put a lot of hope in to come in and support the financial gap when it comes to solving the energy issues in a country like India.
And it can support the local market too, you think, the customers?
Absolutely.
Good, very good. And then Bo, what do you think, Bo?
I think it's touched upon already here, because in my world, as you can see here, I'm heading now a project, Crossroad Electricity, looking at the future electricity system in Sweden. We have a quite good electricity system, as Birgitta said, but looking ahead, we will have significant changes in the electricity supply. And one of them would be, of course, that we will have more local production, and I would say more investments actually made by end users rather than utilities. This is something we have seen very strongly in other countries already. And the reason is that a lot of the new technologies have no economy of scale or low economy of scale. And that means that it's more interesting to distribute and make more local solutions, in fact.
Okay. Yeah, please.
At KTH, we are interested in many of the technical challenges that integration of renewables are presenting. This can vary from the introduction of new materials to new type of breakers or components to some of the ICT solutions. One change when distributed renewables are integrated is that the present power system, which are more designed for centralized generation and distribution, it has to be adapting to the new situations. And there are many technical challenges that is coming in. So this is what we are mostly interested.
I am, yes, one question. Do you think we do enough of research and development within your area with new materials and that?
Yes, it is happening. Well, of course, it will take some time also. Within Sweden, Energy Agency as well as many power companies, including ABB, Vattenfall, Fortum, all of them has come together in financing this research center, where we take up many of these challenges, from storage onwards to material, components, then ICT issues, system stability issues. This type of challenges are
very good
handled.
Okay.
Okay, so I work as a scientist, so my challenges are mostly technical, but of course there should be some business model and financial schemes. But yes, with the renewables, as the previous speaker said, when the penetration goes above a level, you have a lot of challenges in system stability, you have challenges how you transmit, and you need different new technologies. And of course, in transmission level, the technologies could be like HVDC, and as I said, new breakers are needed. So ABB has a lot of research on that, and we continuously drive those researches. And when you come to a lower level, distribution level, then the questions, as the previous speaker mentioned, that should the generation be localized, and that's not really a smart grid view. The view is that generation should be distributed. And then you come more to remote areas, then things comes in microgrids. And then one problem with renewables is, of course, as we all know, the power production varies. And then you need to be careful how you store it. And so you get a continuous energy supply and how you supply it to the customers to reduce lost cost and etc. So there are various challenges, various grid level, and we have always been very active or proactive in those research. And new technology will face and solve this.
And they are coming.
Yes.
Okay.
You are already there.
We have some already, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. It's only up to test them and see how they're working, and you make it benefit in some way. Yep. Okay.
Okay, I'll just put it in the right perspective. Despite all the on-grid and other talks that we are doing, there are 300 million people in India who do not have access to electricity. So, and rest, around 800, 900 million people, they don't have sufficient electricity, and the electricity quality is not good. So we are facing two challenges. The energy security, that's quality, quantity, and that is one issue. And there are places where there is no electricity. They are depending on the firewood and all local products, and that is putting a pressure on the forest, wood, environment that is damaging. So, the way we see it, there's the on-grid, which everybody is talking about, which creates system instability and other things. That can fulfill the security need, energy security need. That means, can I have a 24-hour supply? So that can be regionalized, and then you distribute to the local people, not very far. But whereas the access issue, where 300 million people do not have electricity, there the distributed generation, smart grid, microgrid, and all that thing can come in, so that those people don't have to depend on the grid, and grid need not reach them, and they can still have electricity at their level. Their needs are not much, but whatever the needs, they are not being served. So those are the two things. So integration-wise, on-grid electricity, there are technologies from smart grid, again, the grid management, system stability software. So the challenge is that we are running the age-old grid as in anywhere in the world, which is designed to produce huge amount of energy in one place and then transmit it vertically, horizontally to a long distance. Whereas this is a technology which has come, which can enable really distributed generation and then balancing the intermittency and other issues that are coming in. So probably now we will have to think of a grid which is more distributed, which is slightly local yet integrated. So instead of having a huge one, probably we can think of small units of local needs, which can then be integrated through a smart grid which will manage that. So integration will not be difficult if we think fresh. If we are thinking the old way, That's where the challenge is coming, because we are trying to manage the solar electricity or any renewable as if it is a fossil fuel generation, which is not true.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You're starting the other way, because you can deliver a lot of electricity to the local people. If you start with microgrids, of course, it can be much easier. I think it's the right idea. But it's very interesting. I went to a conference in Rome about energy storage. And they asked me, can you be a part of a panel debate? Yes, of course. In what topic? Grid defection. What do you mean with that? That is when people disconnect from the grid. That are we challenging now. The people want to disconnect because they have very, very cheap renewable energy. But in the other end, if you go to the Andaman Islands, we have to start in the other way. We try to build your own grid first, and then maybe in the future you can connect. But it's not necessary if you want to do it. So, okay, we will discuss microgrids more. But I think one more topic before it's too late to discuss it. Let's say in some ways India are in front from Sweden and the opposite. What can we learn from each other? What's the challenge to share knowledge? How can we be humble and learn from the Andaman Islands? And how can you do that? I think that's a big challenge too. Please, you can start from this way.
If I understood you correctly, you were saying
how can we share knowledge and how can we learn from each other in this kind of cooperation?
Correct. So again, I will start from where I left that we'll have to think slightly fresh. We are still thinking the old ways. And I'm not saying that thinking fresh is easy or whatever we are thinking today is correct. But once we start doing it, we will know. That is the way this fossil fuel-based centralized generation and long-distance distribution has evolved a period of 100 years. And we are trying to build a new system within 5-6 years. Just because I think we are still thinking of the electricity grid as a technical solution. We probably have to think from the need of the consumer side, which is having electricity. Today we are thinking we must have a grid. We must have large transmission lines. We must have large power stations. This is an engineering thinking. Rather, we should think that the consumer, he needs light. He doesn't need electricity. He can have that from kerosene. He can have firewood. He needs heat, light, pumping of water. These are his needs. So if we fulfill those needs, especially with the latest technologies which are coming up, then we will express. Sweden, to my mind, has done a tremendous amount of, and on top of that, the climate change. That's a big thing. I mean, everybody is talking. After Copenhagen, it has become a huge football amongst multiple powers in the world. However, Sweden has done a fantastic thing, to my mind, in the balancing the need of energy, the requirement of society, and the environment. Probably as we are in the learning curve in India, we can understand that balance better and try to adapt. Again, not copy. Try to adapt that to India. So that will be a much better thing to do there, and we will have a system which we can, between Sweden and India, put together, we can gift it to the world. That's what I think is possible.
Good. Maybe we can balance in a new way. Maybe we don't need to balance on AC. We can balance in another way. Maybe.
Yes. That's good. We'll have to think fresh. All that I'm saying, instead of carrying a long, technical 100-year-old baggage, knowing that there is solar cells, there is a huge amount of ICT, and the people who are sensitive, the organizations have a new thinking ability, the innovation, all that has to be brought forth. Probably probably as a combined effort, it can be our gift to the world at large, so that they can do that.
Okay, yeah. Please continue.
Yes, I totally agree with the previous speaker points. And then from Swedish side, it should be, of course, the technology in smart grid, microgrids from leading technical companies. And then, of course, some good business model, which can be, as particular you mentioned, Andamans, this island, where we have some diesel-generated stations, and some distributed powerhouse. There is not a single grid. And the challenge, it will be a huge showcase, I think, for Sweden if they can show that how some island like that can have a grid for the people, and as the need mentioned by the previous speaker. And of course, the take-home points are for Sweden is not only the demonstrator, but the learning curve, how to really build a fresh idea from scratch. And for India is, of course, to know how these technologies can be implemented in such needs. So I think it's a win-win situation.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I can take up from the previous speaker. Taking a parallel, more than 300 million consumers in India went straight, without having a land phone, to mobile phone and all the possibilities of mobile phone technology. So in power area also something like that can happen. There are so many hundreds of millions of households without electricity, and you can think of providing electricity in a totally different ways that you never thought of in some other place, like in advanced countries. So like it can be a total DC distribution at a local level, or ideas like that, which might look very different from what we are used to here in Sweden. So this is a great opportunity to have original thinking and implement those type of ideas. There is a big opportunity provided by India for that. So this is a big challenge that we should take up in Sweden.
Yeah. And Bo has some good ideas, I hope, about that. Sharing knowledge.
Well, no, of course, I was, as I said, part of when introducing transmission technology in India. Today I can see that India is building a transmission system that is very modern, and you have in India technologies that we probably will never see in Sweden because it's beyond the capacity we will use here. Having said that, I also believe, to be very clear here, that the large-scale solution will not disappear, if anyone believes that, because there is a significant economy of scale. And that was one of the mistakes people made when we started looking at wind power. People thought that wind power is small-scale and distributed, which is not, because there is significant economy of scale building wind. Bigger wind turbines are more efficient and has a lower cost. So that part will for sure continue to happen, and we can learn from each other in introducing wind and how this can be solved with modern transmission. On the other hand, on the local level, as has been touched upon many times, we have a very interesting development with technologies like PV solar batteries that has a low economy of scale, which means that distributed solutions will be very attractive. And there, none of us has experience, actually. So we are starting basically from scratch, looking at how we can build these microgrids. So in that development, I think we start on more equal footing, in fact.
Yes, and in the financial markets, there's always an incentive for innovation, and there's an incentive to learn from each other and use best practices of the most efficient financial solutions. And obviously, sometimes that financial innovation goes a little bit too far. We took some lessons of that in the Lehman crash. But when it comes to the green bond instrument, that was developed in 2007, 2008 by SEB together with the World Bank at the initiative of some Swedish investors who wanted to engage and put their money to use in climate-related financing. So the timing of the World Bank's first green bond was 2 weeks after the Lehman crash, and obviously there was a bit of an uphill to get that best practice used by others. And the first ones who did so were the other multilateral development banks, with the EIB, EBRD, Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, etc. And the first Asian issuer of green bonds was the Korean Export and Import Bank. But it took until 2013, in the autumn, until the market really took off. And last year, the green bond market trebled compared to the issuance the year before. And by now, we have seen green bonds issued in India as well by the Exim Bank and the Yes Bank. And everyone says that there is a huge potential to finance climate-related investments with this vehicle. So at SEB, we think that this is only the very first few steps of something that is going to grow significantly over the years to come.
Yeah, I can just add then that actually just a few weeks ago we also launched the Fortune that are actually building one of the world's biggest bio CHP here in Stockholm, and that is also the green bond financing that, so, or hopefully. So that is very positive. But what I was going to say, as a company, we are having our focus on the CO2 neutral production. And we are investing heavily in that. And for our point of view, we were actually our first mission, you could say, when we went to India, was actually how can we use our competence? And we were looking into actually CHP, the combined heat and power, and especially then biomass or waste to energy and so on. So we have looked into that, and that was more to see how we could facilitate areas for industrial use. And have combined heat and power. But at the moment we find it's due to, actually I would say, a lot of CSR issues. We are not totally certain that we can have this facility and be certain about the energy chain of biomass or waste to energy. And I think this is an issue that we need to work together, because this is, as a foreign investor, we are very crucial that we are having all these set and are very certain of the total chain. So, but here I think we can learn a lot, and we have a lot of technology. But at the moment, I mean, and also with the technology development of solar, it's an immense decrease of cost, and of course this is growing at the moment as the most interesting to develop. And for us, it's actually, when we are doing the investment now in India in solar, that is giving us knowledge here, what we can take to Europe. So for us, it's a both way and having this experience. But as I started off with my first intervention, was that I think we need to work together about how the market is development, and also regulation, and also the incentive. How can that work without distorting the investment conditions and so on. So I think there are several issues that we could work on, and I think it's a fantastic challenge. And as said, I mean, there are several issues, both that there are so many people not having access to to electricity, but also this securing up the most certainty for industry also to develop to having access to electricity, cheap electricity.
Oh, very good. So this will be a knowledge project, and maybe we can structure later on what kind of knowledge we need to learn more. But as you mentioned, Birgitta, about I think one very important thing is to compare the legislation, regulation, the Indian energy policy according to the Swedish energy policy, and discuss what kind of possibilities and challenges are in that. And even, of course, the local conditions. Because we heard that words in Sweden many times, not on my backyard. I heard story they want to build up some kind of PV solar power station in the west coast, Varberg, and the people said, no, not on my backyard. And do we have the same problem in Andaman Island? Do they say, not on my backyard, or do they say, thank you if I can have some electricity? So I think we have to learn a lot from the local conditions, a lot. Some other very important, I don't know all the details about the concept, three-pillar concept, but it seems to be very interesting. And I heard something from Ilkan and Tommy here about cooperation between industry, academy, research and development. And if you're familiar with the concept, what do you think if we started that then? What can we develop more in this cooperation between the countries? We just mentioned some of them. What do you think, Birgitta? the three-pillar concept, how can you develop the cooperation between the countries? Is it more research and development? Is it more, what you call it, twinning, that we have exchange between country, local communities, suppliers, or what kind can we develop the concept?
Oh, I have not got into that, but of course, I mean, cooperation is always giving the way forward, I would say, so having open possibilities to cooperate. And of course, but I think when I've been engaged in a lot of discussions also with government and having energy agency and cooperation between countries and so on, I think that's why I'm really stressing this about market and regulation and so on, because I think this is so essential to give this, to understand and get that right, so we get the private sector to go in and to invest. Because sometimes I feel that we are, going into the technical solution immediately without having understood the possibilities actually to make a business case out of it. Mm-hmm. So I think here it's important to also get the business into these type of investment or cooperation, so that we get that and not only look at the beauty of the technology, but of course technology is also a way to go forward. And I think a lot of challenges is about storage, and I think that is a main issue actually for further development. And here I think we can work together. But I'm a bit stressing this about knowledge about how can we develop the market and the regulation.
There can be some local market with help from green bonds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you think that, Mats, is okay?
Absolutely. I'm certain that the local green bond market in India will develop, given that India is such a large country. But there is one caveat, however. In order to issue green bonds, you need to have a business and a loan need that is large enough to make it relevant for you to go to the bond market, which immediately disqualifies many of the smaller players. But India is so large, there are so large investments that the local market is certainly going to get there. The question is only when, not if.
Bo, you know more about the three-pillar concept. Maybe you have some idea how to go further with that.
But I was going to raise another issue because in cooperation, and that is about finding people with the right knowledge. I mean, Sweden would have problems to survive without having the cooperation with countries like India when it comes to supply of engineers. We had some tough times there. There was a very low interest for engineering education, and we were actually saved then by countries like India. And I have a good experience also from setting up engineering facilities in India. So I think on the human capital side, there is a lot to gain, and we are certainly not starting from scratch there. We have a very good experience, and I think that can be developed even further. I think Raju will know that also.
Of course. I would definitely agree, because at KTH we make a lot of efforts in reaching out to the technology students in India and make them attracted to Sweden instead of US, which is their traditional destination. And we are making some progress in that, I have to say. Mm-hmm. So more and more Indian students, technology students, are coming to Sweden for their higher education. Now, this pairing of private industry and the universities in both countries in this mutual project will be quite interesting, and this will also increase the momentum of the Indian students in their interest for the higher education facilities at Sweden. So I will definitely support it.
Yeah, maybe we can start some new education about microgrids and Andaman Islands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is
learn to set it up.
It is the human power development.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I also strongly believe with this collaborated research, because if we specifically talk about microgrid, yes, it can have different applications, and the requirements changes where it is applied. So when something is doing for industry is very different for when it is doing for a remote island in India. So if we need to get these requirements correctly for the technical inputs, it has to be collaborated research. And of course, as I mentioned, this business model has to be profitable. Otherwise, the motivation for setting up this microgrid is not that valid. So those information should also come from that side. So it's a strong case for collaborated research. First to find out the required technical requirements as well as the model for the microgrid. Yeah?
Well, okay, I'll put it slightly more into three aspects. One is that, yes, I agree fully with everyone that there is a skill transfer, people training and transferring people out here instead of saying the traditional US. But one thing which India today is facing, one's genuine challenge is that the people want lowest possible tariff. So now when I say lowest possible tariff, exactly we do not know what it is. It can be zero, but it can't be. So it is slightly above somewhere. So we'll have to, it is continuously pushing down the tariff. So the thing is to, and the business case rests on two things, the design parameters and the financing. So now the design has to be optimal, where a lot of research like ABB and they have technology which will come in. Also financing. The cost of financing as of now in India is, it suffers from two things. Internal domestic cost of finance is high. And when you borrow externally, there are some restrictions on the quantum and the duration for which you can borrow. Also, the hedging cost is still high. So possibly there is a case to form a joint forum to look at that. That's number one. Number two is this, now government is trying various, making various initiatives. One is this Make in India. So what they believe is that they think if they get manufactured in India, you don't have to import. So the burden on that will come and the country risk will come down and overall the risk perception and the hedging cost will come down and then you can borrow from abroad for which you may have less need. So less fund requirement, less risk, so it is a win-win situation. To that extent, our organization has tied up with, many are doing, I'm just giving our example that we have signed up a module manufacturing with Chinese people. Similar other things, my senior colleague, Mr. Abhinav Mayank will be here. So he is the architect of that deal. So similar things, he is also an active person involved in Make in India. So he can elaborate more if somebody is interested. Next is that the financing and these two. The third thing which I think is required is we are looking from Sweden and India. Probably we'll have to make it slightly more global. If we can involve more countries. So now Solar Direct is pioneering an initiative called Terawatt Initiative. What they are saying is they're trying to get a lot of collaborators globally to say 1 terawatt is possible through solar energy. But for that, you need developers, willing manufacturers with capacity, funding agencies which can fund and which makes it feasible. So there are several things. So if Sweden can take a lead or there can be a joint forum which can take a lead and collaborate with everyone in the world, then possibly it will have a bigger meaning. Okay, we can start somewhere, but because ultimately we'll have to demonstrate for renewable, there is a strong case comes from the climate change. If we link it to the climate change, it has more justification compared to fossil, because today there is a competition, whether we like it or not. In countries like India, people are asking this question, why am I doing renewable? Because one of the theories is that I don't have coal, I'm importing coal. So if I have coal, I don't need all this. This is expensive, intermittent, and all things. I can solve everything to coal. But coal has a higher environmental cost and the climate change actually does not make a business case for it. But somehow I'm surprised that nobody is pushing for it. So it is better to have a global alternative, more people, more together, to make a case for climate change and link it to that. That will provide a better justification.
No, maybe we can have an impact on the global situation too. And I think I have read a lot about diesel. You're using a lot of diesel on the island, so that's not so good. So maybe you can pay for every liter of diesel you don't use in some way. But if we go back to one of the main topics here, there are some newsletters about microgrid. You can Google, you can read so much about it. And someone call it local energy system. That's a better word. And you're off-grid, on-grid, you're loose of main, so many hype words. But in your mind, what's a microgrid and what's that for you? Very shortly.
Okay, very simply, the micro should be as small as possible, but should be technically stable and manageable. Yeah. That's what I would say. Today the challenge is the technical stability and the critical mass for revenue. Once these two are there, the microgrid is possible. It can be even 1 kilowatt. Yeah. It is not normally not, but I'm just saying that if...
It can be a nanogrid too if you read that. If you Google a nanogrid, you can read a lot too. What's the difference between nanogrid and microgrid? So there are hype words all the time.
I think we are inventing words as we go down slowly.
Yeah.
So mini, micro, now it is nano, and we'll have to find another word below that.
Yeah. If you use the cell phone, you have a nanogrid, so you can expand a little bit.
Right.
Okay, what do you think? What's microgrid?
That's easy for me. I did PhD in microgrid. Now, so microgrid for me is not really a single system, small, just for a household in kilowatt range, because that will be, of course, using a PV panel and maybe a storage. I'm from Calcutta, we have in our house, because our grid, we have frequent load shedding, and then we have a storage and that supply the load in our house automatically through inverter, but that's not a microgrid. To me, microgrid should be a collection of load and collections of distributed generator, and you have a control to control them. And it could be, of course, go from 100 kilowatt to megawatt range, but that's a microgrid. And as just picking your words on that, this microgrid has different applications. When we're talking about island, yes, you don't have a chance to connect to the main grid at all. So that's a remote microgrid. But when you're talking about a military base in US, maybe a lot of microgrid applications, that is connected to the grid, but you have some very sensitive loads, so you don't want your load to shut down when you lose the grid. So this microgrid can connect and isolate from the main grid. So to me, microgrid is a network which has a very high reliability for the generation, and it can give this in a lower cost and less environmental impact. That's a microgrid to me.
So controllable, a little bit buzzword.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Controllable from generation as well as from load side. Yeah.
For me, the microgrid is self-sustainable in the sense that it should be having many different type of generating sources that are complement to each other. So for example, if you have wind, of course you can use wind, but if wind is not there, then solar should be available, or something else should be available. So it has to be always available and self-sustaining. Then control, of course, is extremely important in microgrid. And it should be able to connect to the main grid when it is required. And in fact, microgrid can support the main grid also. There's a very interesting issue of Power Engineering magazine from IEEE, the most recent one, where it is devoted to the resilience of the grid. Resilience means if something unforeseen can happen, like severe weather, earthquake or something like that, the grid should be still able to cope up with it. And there was an article about the Fukushima earthquake and what happened afterwards. And they were showing that the two microgrids that was there was kind of intact. They were able to get it on very fast after the earthquake, whereas the main grid, it took several months for them to get it back. So that resiliency that microgrid provide is enormous. If there are a lot of microgrids that is alongside the main grid. So this is what I think about.
It's some kind of internet, then you can use some of the grid all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I will not start more discussion about the definition and maybe some aspects on microgrids. I think one of the challenges with microgrids is that to have capacity utilization, because that has been, I would say, one of the hurdles for so-called microturbines. There were people put a lot of expectations in microturbines, but the market has not picked up so much because the utilization is fairly low if you only are restricted to supply to the local consumer. So I think that's why there are several reasons why the microgrids have a benefit of being connected to the main grid. I mean, one is, of course, as a backup, but the other one is also, as someone mentioned, to sell services. There is an interesting concept in US. PDM is a distributor. They have what they call curtailment service providers that sell services up, and that will, in fact, increase the value of the microgrids. So I think it's a mutual benefit if with this connection. And personally, I am quite skeptical about the off-grid solutions for economical reasons, in fact.
Well, definitions of microgrid, nanogrids, etc., that is certainly beyond my area of competence, so I'll refrain from defining that for you. But I would like to make just a small remark, because when it comes to financing environmental investments with green bonds, the same exact question arises for the investors. They are just like me, financial guys. How are they to judge whether investment A or B is actually environmental and long-term and sustainable? And in order to alleviate that problem and help them make well-informed investment decisions, at SEB we always let the issuer of a green bond expose their green bond framework, what they are going to use the money for and how they operate, to the guys who really understand. So we cooperate with an environmental and climate research institute in Oslo who give a second opinion, and thereby the investors can know what they buy, which was exactly the case with Fortum.
Okay, I would say I don't have either the definition of microgrid, because we're not really into it. But I think just as Bo is saying, that I think it's a need of connection, because I think we have to look at it in a more holistic view. What is the environmental or economic into it? And I'm sure that it is possible. That's the way you should start up in some areas. I think that's fortunate, but I think it shouldn't be. Sometimes I find that the discussion is that it's good to deconnect from the total grid, and then I think we have to really look into what are the environmental issues there, and how economic is it. I mean, that is, and I think it. Well, I think that discussion should be there. But of course, if we start in the rural area, of course, it's probably the way to start up. But then you have to also look into the economics and the environmental aspects as well.
Maybe we define it from a social point. What's the social impact on the microgrids? Can we give power to the customers, I used to say. Maybe we can have some questions from the audience. Yes, please. Do you have some microphones so we can... If you come up, maybe you can...
Thank you. My name is Hormas Kapadia, long-term resident of Sweden, come from India originally. You made a reference to the spread of mobile phones today, 300 million. I was implemental with Ericsson when we started with mobile phones about 94, 95, and they were very expensive, the running of mobile phones. My question is on economy. Will the people we are targeting with these small electrical systems be able to afford it? Because Sweden went from a state-controlled electrical distribution to a free market distribution. We all thought at the time that there would be competition here, but there isn't any competition It is controlled by a few large companies. We have one representation here. And the grid distribution becomes more and more expensive every year. In fact, this year we had 2 increases in grid distribution in Stockholm. So my question is, will it be affordable for the people to have this? Because they are not really rich people.
Who in the panel want to take that question? A little bit economic and the competition in the market and that. Birgitta?
Well, the Swedish market, it was so-called, you can say, deregulation in '96. And then what has happened was that we separated the distribution network and the sales and also the production. And the distribution network, that is a monopoly, that is controlled, and the tariffs or the possibilities to take out the tariffs is set, the maximum is set from the Inspectorate of Energy. And of course, we have had increases in cost, and you can say because we've had also a lot of different reforms. We have new meters, and we have also safeguarding the network from storms and weather conditions and so on. And that has, during a lot of years, we didn't make any, I would say, hardly any investment. But during the last 7 years, I would say, there has been a tremendous increase in investment, of course, and that has have to somehow pay off. And but that is then controlled by the Inspectorate. Concerning the sale of electricity, there's, don't have the figure here, I think it's 170 different companies selling electricity in Sweden. And you can choose. You don't need to choose from the big 3, but you can choose from others. So there is a competition. And I mean, there are different type of possibilities to pay directly from the spot price, or 1 year, or 3 years, or 5 years. So it is really up to the possibilities. But of course, I mean, there's a lot of, somehow it's fine that it's taken for granted that electricity should be there and it shouldn't really cost so much. But at the moment we are at prices that it's not possible to make investment in Sweden with the cost that we have at the market today. You can't make any investment if you don't get subsidy. And that is the situation. But what we believe, and that should be the really, and that I think pointed out also earlier here, is about the climate issue. And of course there is a need to take, there should be a cost on carbon or CO2. And we believe that the EU ETS or a cap and trade system is the way forward. And here of course we want to need an agreement also in Paris that we get a more global agreement, and that is very important.
Thank you for the answer. This is a very interesting question, because if you look at the economic, microgrids, mostly of the microgrids, if they are disconnected, are private network, and they are not regulated anywhere. Because you look over the regulation, because you have separated from the grid, you can have charge as what you like. It depends who has owned the investment can put up the price. So it's very interesting to discuss how you can regulate microgrids. Thank you for that question.
It's like the landlord of a building.
Yeah. The landowner, someone said you have to pay tax for your roof if you use for PV, but local impact can have a lot of that regulation, maybe. One more question, please.
I am Srinivas Murthy. I am a former president of the Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Bangalore. The Chambers of Commerce will be putting so many ideas to the government's head to be implemented, and they do it. In Karnataka government, it has taken a very, very progressive step in respect of the renewable energy. While the government itself charges around 0.5 to 0.9 kroners per unit of electricity, it is giving 1.1 kroner of electricity, per unit of electricity to the person who produces this renewable energy by solar cells. So I think this is a very, very progressive step in seeing that the generation of the renewable energy increases. That is one, just I thought that I will let you know, all the people, how the government is encouraging the production of the renewable energy. The other aspect is, in India, renewable energy, solar cell means it is made by China only. That is what the progress is. I would like to know whether Sweden also manufactures these solar cells and at what cost compared to China. That's what I want to know. Yeah.
Was there any question or were more comment? I didn't follow all of it. Did I get a question to the panelists about the
Yes, I would like to know, any other encouragement also is to be given by the government as per the panelists so that the production of renewable energy increases. Because it's all in private hands. Private people set up their renewable energy production units on their rooftops or in the barren fields that is available and all. So that's what has been going on in our state. So any other things that the government can do and that the chamber can submit to the government so that the renewable energy production increases. That's what I wanted to know from the panelists.
Who wants to take the question?
I'm not sure. The question, or if it was related to incentives and so, I mean, it's a growing concern, and then I can take Europe as a whole, that if you look at the generation that is actually built in Europe today, most of it is one way or the other subsidized. And the last example is not actually renewable, is nuclear power in UK, which I believe is subsidized because it's a long-term feed-in contract. That is a concern because it disrupts the market. And as I think Birgitta said, the situation in Sweden is today that the market is so effective that it's not, nothing can be built. We have so low prices with the model we have, market model, that nothing will be built of any kind. And that's a concern. Then there was a question also related to PV solar, and there I can say that there is no actual production in Sweden at all of that. We make some panels, but in very small scale, and of course cells are not made at all. As other people, we are looking for next generation maybe of technology.
Hello, good afternoon all panelists. Yes, myself Bhagwan Vishwal, I am from east part of India. I have my own company in transmission distribution and power sector. Also, I have installed solar plant. What I observed today, Mr. Mahapaत्र told, that people are demanding zero tariff, right? Like, we have three problems. One is financial crisis management, financial challenging. Second is transmission distribution problem. Third is the tariff problem. So, you got the point? One is financial challenge, second is transmission distribution losses, the third is tariff problem. To avoid all the three, so why not start this small, micro and nano model, renewable like solar and power, wind power also?
Yeah, do you follow the question? Tariffs, about tariffs?
No, to avoid these three things. One is financial challenge, second is transmission distribution losses, third is tariff. Because India peoples like zero tariff, slightly more than the zero tariff.
Is it about the losses and tariffs? So if I understand correctly...
You can start again.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, okay, good, yeah.
If we are saying which one has the priority, that means the tariff or transmission loss or the investment or...
Investment, all three.
All the three? Which one has priority?
I think transmission distribution loss is more challenging in Indian governments.
I'm just wondering about the question. The question is that all three are important or?
All three are important.
Well, then that's a comment. There is no question.
Okay, if you look at the tariffs, in Sweden they are trying to apply some kind of peak tariffs. That will be some incentives to if you want to install the renewable to start with. And the other way, if you put up local energy system, you can put up your own tariffs. Of course, you can lower the losses because you don't need to transmit energy. But in overall, if you look at the losses in the grid, sometimes the losses is decreasing. It depends on where you connect the renewable into the grid. In some parts of the grid, you have higher losses, we have production losses. So you have to look at every special application to see the impact on capacity, flexibility and losses. So it's not an easy answer, but of course you have to look over the tariffs. You know that. So there is one technical to charge the cost of the microgrids, of course.
Just a quick comment. Definitely the other point, the loss will be less with microgrids.
If you do a lot of calculation about losses, you can see if you connect it on the low voltage grid, maybe you can decrease the losses. But if you build up a production grid with 10 megawatt wind power, you will increase the losses in some way. But it depends on the load in the grid too. But in general, if you connect it on the low voltage, maybe you can decrease the losses, yes. And that's a benefit, of course.
That decreases when the generation go closer to the loads, which is the microgrid concept. So that's one of the key idea of microgrid is to also reduce the loss.
But I think even in the, let's see, the Nordic system, we can have a lot of benefits from microgrids because you can create a new business model, you can create the capacity that you need, and you can create the flexibility, what we need in the Nordic system too, so we can learn a lot when we start to build the local energy systems in Andaman Islands, of course. Yes, Birgitta, you. Some more questions?
Yeah, so hi. So while we move towards a collaborative approach where Swedish companies are now opening up to invest in India, for example, Fortium, Indian companies are coming forward to seek opportunities to invest in Sweden. There is information technology plays a critical role. So how do you see to address the EU data security norms to make it more flexible for any parties, either Sweden, from parties from India, to work in a flexible way and easy way? Because there is a huge need to exchange data, there is a huge need to exchange knowledge.
Okay, I can start. I'm involved in another big project that we are looking at how to build up a database because data from this kind of renewable, and if you use storage, they are not so much data, so it's a very good idea to build up a database from the beginning that some people can have access to if you want to do some calculation for investment. But as we heard before, microgrids is some kind of control. So of course you need to develop a lot of IT within the microgrids concept. Of course you do. Otherwise it's very hard to develop the whole idea.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you're talking about data exchange for the control of the network, that's much more, and more smarter grid it becomes, the more exchange of information it has to be with much higher reliability. That's for sure. So there is always, and if you're talking about data centers, interestingly, they are now talking about also data centers, which is conventionally supplied by UPS, make it like a microgrid, so you don't lose that, because then you lose data. So of course there is a huge importance for data, and it will be a lot of IT applications there.
Yeah, but are there any, because we have so many energy gurus here, so I would definitely like to leverage this opportunity. But are there any initiatives, or are there on the government level which are planned to make the policies more flexible, the data security more flexible, where the exchange of data becomes more easy? Are there any initiatives which are being planned or in discussion?
I think it's a very important question to address to the project later on, because we need a lot of data, but you have to define the access to the data, who is going can use the data. So and of course, electronic is absolutely, and communication IT important for this. Yes, Birgitta, we end off a little bit.
Yeah, I just was thinking about that. We do have projects, and there are several projects in Sweden about these smart grids. And now we are introducing also more test phase really here just as here in Stockholm, the Royal Seaport, and where we are working together with ABB, Ericsson, and ETH as well. And there, of course, there is a lot of with the digitalization and the ET, of course, and the data. It's of course making us possibility to make new, you can say, well, new interface with the customer. And here it's demand and response on both electricity, warm water, and heat. So we are trying to look into the totality there for Sweden point of view. But here I think with the discussion is very lot about integrity. What do the customer really are willing to have us or anyone else to look into how their profiles look like. So I think the integrity is also an issue, and also the behavior that we have to face and have to discuss. So I don't think just to give out data, I think we have to also look how is the willingness from the customer to take part of this. So I think that is also an issue that we have to.
Okay, we will soon complete the discussion, but Bo, did you have just some comments?
Just a short comment to supplement what Birgitta said. There is a significant culture difference in Europe between countries in terms of data security. We have completely different views, and there I think is one of the main hurdles, even before we discuss exchanging data, which kind of data that should be exchanged. We tend to be very liberal here in Sweden because of historic reasons. Others are much more restrictive.
Okay, thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
I'm sure that we can contribute to sustainable Andaman Islands. And now over to Erik. Thank you very much.